I'm going to be talking about something which most people will think is really elementary from the first concept of it. Oh, of course, you know, it's a merry-go-round, it's a money-go-round, it's a paper chase, and you know, money is the root of all evil, and we're all imprisoned by money. We all know this. But what I'm asking today is that, could it ever have been any other way? Has it ever been any other way? I don't think it has. Now, what I'm going to be saying is that when we look at money, it's just a concept, isn't it? It's just a name that we've given to an exchange facility. And so all we do these days is we exchange. And how we exchange predominantly is that the people in the lower echelons of the world, we exchange our physical energy, our life force. We give our life force in exchange for paper, which has no intrinsic value whatsoever. But the only thing that has value is that it's recognised as having value. It's preposterous. But let's go back now. I want to go back thousands of years. And if we look then, I mean, there's still places around the world that operate like this. For instance, people like the Bedouin in the Sahara Desert in Africa. These indigenous Arabs, they are nomadic predominantly, and they travel around when it is necessary for the procuring of their life force, which predominantly is food and water, and utilities which enable them to attain the food and water. So if you look at like Bedouin, for instance, they're living in this desert. Wow, what's growing there? Very, very little. But the main source of life force, energy, is a variety of food, and one of the most prolific foodstuffs is the goat, because they're a very arduous creature. They'll eat anything, and so they can survive in very arid terrains, eating bark and paper. You'll see them eating cigarette packets. I mean, I've seen lots of donkeys just loving cigarette packets. I actually saw one day, when I was on one of the Canary Islands, you've got these donkeys, and they're beautiful donkeys, and they go around in little groups, and they're free to go around the whole island. They walk across the road, they go through the little townships, and all the cars stop, and they've got their faces in the bins, and they're looking for morsels of paper, maybe with some sort of you know, sauce on it or something, you know, which is a little bit more exciting than shrubbery. And so I've seen them eating cigarette packets, and on one particular occasion I saw this one on a path, and it come upon this cigarette packet, and it gets the cigarette packet with its lips, and it starts to scrape it on the floor like this. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, are you playing, or what are you doing? So I continued to watch this for 5 minutes, and I discerned that there was a rationale behind what it was doing. What it was doing, it was scraping the packet like this. It had hold of the flap that opens, the smaller part, in its lips, and it was scraping the bottom part. And what I discerned via the action of this ass was that it was scraping off the polythene, because it didn't want to eat that, because it knew instinctively that it couldn't digest that. And so it scraped it and scraped it and scraped it until the polythene blew off in the wind, and then it ate it. It didn't have any objection about the silver foil in that. Maybe that was really too difficult trying to pull that out, because you have to pull it out, don't you, because it's stuck with some glue. But they did that on a regular basis. and they enjoyed it. Well, what is paper? You know, it's wood mixed with glues and shit, but you know, they eat wood. And so, anyway, I found that interesting. So I digressed a little bit there, but when we're looking at like Bedouin, they travel around with their camel trains, and they've got their wares, which they exchange. Some of them weave baskets, some of them procure dried salted meats, some of them carry huge blocks of salt because the camels need salt for their survival, and humans, of course, they like it in their cuisine, but it is also a necessary requirement. And so one family could just like trade in salt. They get the salt from a salt lake a long way away, or maybe they buy it from somebody that's brought it from a long way away, and then that's their source of exchange. Just like our source is paper. And so they'll chip off blocks and they'll weigh it out, and they'll exchange it for a wicker basket or some dried meat or something like this. And so if you then look at, say, like, you know, jungle dwelling humans, then invariably the women, they're bound to the little settlement, and they mind the children when they're very, very young, because when they get to a certain age, as soon as they can, you know, walk and keep up with the elders, then they go out to learn that, if they're males. The females will learn to weave baskets and gather water and cook and skin animals and all this sort of thing. And so when you look at the individual, you got one individual, and maybe this guy is old, okay? He's done all the hunting, and he's had several children, because he knows in that society that if he doesn't have children, if he doesn't belong to an extended family, then the chances of his survival are very, very slim, because we need a level of exchange to have value. If an old man living in the bush out there, well, who's he? He's not father of any of us. Why should we feed him? Why should we support him? Why should we look after him? How many people would, you know, oh, come on, everybody, you know, all of you people that don't do any work and you don't procure anything yourself, yeah, come into the clan. It isn't like that, really, is it? It's survival, and people have to have a value, and predominantly how they have a value is by what they can procure, what they can share with the community in the settlement, or if they have given birth to children, whereby there's an inherent respect. You must respect your elders, and you will provide for them for the rest of their lives, because they brought you up, they taught you everything you know, and so it's a form of exchange, isn't it? So this exchange thing is something which is intrinsic to the human being, and we cannot live without it, because one person cannot procure everything that he needs. For instance, the food, the clothing, the shelter, the tools to do all the hunting and all this sort of thing. And even if at some stage in their lives they become very, very independent and they can do all this stuff, there's going to come a point whereby maybe they're ill, or all of a sudden they can't do it. So you need a community. Then when you get old, you need the community. And what do? You used to be a great hunter, you used to take out all your sons and show them how to hunt, but now you're, you know, 70 years old, all your teeth are gone, and you're frail and you can't do anything. But you can take on board a woman's job. You can start weaving baskets, because you still want to be useful to the community. You don't just want to be a punt, you don't just want to sit there like an elder, a big wise elder, even though some do if they're chiefs and something like this. And so what I'm saying here in this video, a bit convoluted, is that the human being intrinsically has this necessity and this requirement for exchange for its survival. And so if you ask the question, could the world be any other way than it is now? The reason why all this horror is going on, the reason why we're being manipulated and we're being herded and the wars are being generated, it's all about money. Because the money is power, because it's exchange. And so when you can earn money without exchanging anything, if, for instance, you've got an enormous amount of money and then you bring about, like the Zionist bankers do, they bring about depressions, and the vast majority of the wares within any society become almost worthless because nobody's got the exchange to purchase them, but they have. So they bring about the crash, and then they buy up everything for, you know, penny on the dollar. And so this is how they acquire their mass wealth. But if you don't have that facility, then like a tradesperson, a carpenter or plumber or something like this, then they've got to put their life's energy into it, and they exchange their energy for their finished product, and then they'll get paid the paper energy, whereby they can go out and they can buy, you know, all the enormous amount of wares that we've got available to us today. And so how different is it these days than 10,000 years ago? The exchange principle was always there, and it started to get a little bit more sophisticated. i.e., when I was living in Ghana, I used to travel around to the villages, and I used to have conversations with villagers who were still living very, very humble lives, really. And say you've got one guy that's a cattle herder, and he's got like 100 cattle, and that's all he does. He doesn't do anything. He just, like, you know, maybe he's got his pen, but invariably they don't have a pen. They're kind of like a bit nomadic. They keep leading them around certain areas so the cattle can feed on the shrubbery and bush, which is quite Spartan. And so then, just by herding the animals, you know, it's the natural propensity for animals to breed, and so his capital is increasing. He's getting interest on his capital all the time. Some are dying, but predominantly the herd is growing because there's more births than there are deaths. And so he is earning his interest, and then he can exchange his interest. He can cream off the top his interest from his main body of capital, and he can buy all the things that you know, give rise to his sustenance and comfort. And so I'm looking around the world and I think, wow, it's crazy to think that we've all been born into this prison where the law, the most predominant law, is that of exchange of life force or wares. Doesn't matter what it is, or paper. The exchange of an illusion. Any way you look at it. The most fundamental intrinsic thing to the human being is that we cannot survive without exchange. And so what's happened these days is that the exchange has become far more sophisticated. And of course it's becoming more and more sophisticated as time goes on, because we won't even need money soon. You know, when people are chipped, and then or they'll have a retina scan, they'll be recognised by the retina, and then that's all they'll need. They won't need to carry anything else around. And so they'll be exchanging via that. And then if you look at yourself and you go, wow, oh, okay, well, I've got resentment for being in this exchanging environment. I've got a resentment against these people that, you know, are narrowing down my options, and they're bullying us, and so we've got to do this and we've got to do that. But when you look at it seriously, some people could say romantically, oh, I'd rather live 10,000 years ago and go out hunting my own food and growing my own vegetables. Well, in an ideal world, when you've got the perfect climate all the time, and you're living in a part of the world which foodstuff's growing throughout the year, and you know, you don't have no droughts and no famines and all this sort of thing, you know, life expectancy was very, very low, wasn't it? And so what's happened these days is we're living to be 3 times as old because of the comfort realm that we're in. And so if we look at it really, then we can say it really is a good time to live. The world has become so comfortable, and there's all that stuff that's ever been on the world that's still available if you want it. Only there's a whole lot more, isn't there? And the options are becoming more and more expansive, incredibly expansive these days. The things that kids have got at their fingers, sitting in their lounge, you know, drones flying around the sky with cameras that you can film everything, and you know, they're very, very relatively inexpensive. Many things that we can have for our pleasure, entertainment, and for our survival. Things that aid our survival. And so we look around and there's a whole lot of old people all over the place. Well, this is due to the benefit of the mechanism of the society these days. It wouldn't have always been so in the old days, would it? Because we wouldn't have the medical advances, we wouldn't have had the variety of lifestyle which gave rise to longevity. And so the question was then, today, could this world be any other way? Well, I mean, it can be variants of the exchange policy. The world, maybe, it could be without oligarchs and kings and queens and all the rest of it that govern the people. But I think there's a place for that because it keeps order also, doesn't it? There's a certain respect for the people up there, and they impose laws and restrictions upon the lesser people, and so things run much more smoothly. And when you look at statistics, these days there are far, far less wars than there ever has been. You know, the human being predominantly is a warmonger. The true nature of the human being is that, potentially, of greed. We could say, oh no, not everyone's greedy. Well, not everyone's greedy, you know. People want to share and people want to be equal and all this, but lots of people don't. And it's a natural propensity of the human being that some are going to rise above the others and take control. And so this has always been the case with elders and leaders of tribes and this, that and the other. So it could never be any other way. We've got a variety of system now which is led by invisible people for the better part, and so we may, you know, find some resentment about that due to the mass of energy that they've got at their fingertips, the mass of power that they've got. But because they are there, because they've done what they've done, I'm probably sitting here now, in this apartment, in this country, just sunning my ass every day, because I've used their system to do a little of what they did. I capitalised on other people's energy, and I acquired an amount of money which gave rise to my internal power, the facility to emancipate myself from labour. And so I haven't laboured for 12 years now. That's a facility that has been possible to me only via this money to exchange, whereby you can just get zeros and ones and, you know, any other number on a computer somewhere, and you can go to any service till all over the place and you can just keep drawing it out, drawing it out, drawing it out. It's kind of like magic. I just put in 4 digits and I draw out more energy. And I do that kind of like once a fortnight. And then the rest of the time I'm just like, enjoying myself. So this exchange rate thing, if we are prepared to work long and hard and we're not too daft, then we can capitalise on it and we can rise above many other people who can't do that. And so the whole world is a hierarchical system, isn't it? And depending on your energy and your intellect and your devotion to whatever you do, then you raise up to a certain comfort level which is over and above people below you, but it's below the ones above you. And so this is what we endeavour to achieve in our lives, isn't it? A level of comfort which is satiating to ourselves. I think we'll find if we look around, with people working in certain jobs, and maybe they're entrepreneurs and they've got their own business and this, that and the other. The people could always get promotion, they could always go on another course, they could always learn a little bit more, they could always strive for a higher position. But lots of people go, I don't want the hassle. I'm happy here. I'm earning X amount a year, and that affords me a particular lifestyle which I'm comfortable with. Because if I wanted to get promotion and more money, okay, I'd get a bigger house and a bigger car, but what else would be better in my life? I wouldn't emancipate myself anymore. In actual fact, I'd probably imprison myself more, because I'd be more dedicated to the task that I was getting paid for. And so lots of people, they'll reach a plateau of comfort. That's their comfort zone, and they'll stay there mostly all their lives. They'll try to stay there. Sometimes they'll slip back down onto a lesser level. Sometimes by fortune they'll raise up, i.e. if you've worked hard all your life and you've been in the property market, then when you get older, you've got a big house, all your kids have left, you can sell the house, and then you can move to a smaller, very, very comfortable place, can't you? And so, or you can even move out of a particular area into a more affluent area, buy a smaller place, and you know, these sort of things. You can choose your countries which you want to go and live in. And so when we look at it then, people, what I'm saying here is really, should we really have any resentment to this thing that's going on? We can look around and we can say, oh, they're injecting us, they're trying to kill us, or they're doing this to the water, they're doing this in the sky, and they're manipulating us and they're controlling us, and they're doing all this stuff. Yeah, they are. But we live in a long time, aren't we? You know, so for the restrictions that they're bringing about, and you know, it's like you speak about the injections with the mercury in the inoculations and this, that and the other. Well, I don't see people around me dropping like flies. I see them getting older and older. And okay, I do believe there is a truth in this, that they are trying to kill the population, but there's a lot of people still, isn't there? And I don't know, you just don't hear about every Tom, Dick and Harry dropping like flies around you because of the fluoride, because of the chemtrails, they've got chem lung, or because of the mercury injection they had when they're like 4 years old. There's no real evidence of that, is there? And so you look around and you go, well, okay, you know, it's comfortable here. It's probably not ideal, but I don't know what ideal is. Does anybody know what ideal is? We've all got our own ideology of our certain utopia, haven't we? And so I think there's a lot to be said for a level of acceptance and ignorance to what's going on this planet. Because if you're ignorant to the machinations that the Illuminati are supposed to be doing, then you look around and you go, well, it looks pretty good to me. I'll abide by these rules. They're not so oppressive. I can still walk in the park. I can still travel around the world. Yeah, I can choose my jobs, and I can choose the person I want to fall in love with and marry, and I can have children and all this sort of thing. I can buy myself a home. Seems all right. You know, there's no saber-toothed tigers in my garden. There's no malaria that's going to be compromising the life of my children, and all this sort of thing in, you know, Western countries. And so, I don't know, people. I just think, like, you see, if you acquire a large amount of information via this medium of YouTube, then it opens up a whole can of worms, the vast majority of which isn't of any benefit to you whatsoever, because you ain't never going to change any of it. All you're going to do maybe is become pensive about it, become a little bit anxious about it, become nervous about it, become afraid, feel compromised, and all this sort of thing. Ignorance can very often be bliss. And so, what can I conclude then when I look at my life now and the things I know? Well, it depends, you see. And I've said this on many occasions, it depends on your personal aptitude as to how you're going to assimilate this information and how your mind is going to deal with it. Now, personally, I don't give a flying about any of the things they're doing. I've got this kind of like, it is what it is, you know. You find yourself here in this remarkable thing. It's remarkable in a whole myriad of ways. It's incredibly remarkable. Try to figure it out. Try to get to the top and bottom of it. Forget it. All you're going to do is fill your head up with mostly nonsense. Hearsay, speculation, conspiracy, and all this sort of thing. Find something that you enjoy doing and endeavour to spend as much time as possible that you can in doing that. That, I think, guys and girls, ladies and gents, is the answer to this. It's not about fighting it, running all around, fighting, or... There's no fight. There never will be a fight. There's only the illusion of change. The only change that's coming about is the one that's been steamrolled and has been steamrolled for thousands of years. It ain't ever changing. The energies that have got the fetters deeply clasping this world are not about to let go. And so you say to yourself, well, whatever will be, will be. I'm enjoying this incredible experience. And each moment of my life, however long or short it may be, I'm going to make sure that I've got something to reflect upon that I enjoyed. I really enjoyed that Earth experience. So, what's my message then? My message, people, is to try to eliminate the fear and the anxiety. Anything that gives you that, steer clear of it. Face it. I would always say face it to see if it's a reality. If it is a reality, okay, then you've got to steer clear of it. For instance, I mean, if you're living in a region which is very volatile and it can blow up into civil war at any given time, there's something legitimate to be afraid of, because the chances are family members are going to be losing their lives. And so, legitimate fears, okay, protect yourself against those. But all the rest of the fears that don't really have any legitimacy, just forget about it and enjoy yourselves.